I just decided, Sloth Grip should be a thing before I knew what it was, and then started piecing together, well, what would that look like? So the things that I knew was that I wanted it to be in the world of climbing, and I wanted it to have a legitimate purpose, whatever that was, at whatever size I could make it.
From ALDA, this is the Protect Your Wild podcast, a show about founders, athletes, and influencers, and how their passion for the environment has led to their actions and career paths today. I'm Colin Campbell, and this week I'm having a chat with Kevin Grinnell, the founder of Slothgrip. They're a climbing lifestyle brand whose mission it is to help save those cute-ass sloths. If you want to show them some love, use code ALDA Sloths for 20% off your order at slothgrip.com. Enjoy. Today, I'm here with our special guest, Kevin Grinnell of Slothgrip.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Colin.
Yeah,
excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you because you're combining two of my favorite things, which are climbing and helping out the environment. So I guess for starters, just tell me a little bit kind of about your background with climbing and nature and how that led to Slothgrip here.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So climbing and nature, I'm a big fan of both. I'll start with climbing because that one's actually relatively, I don't know if you'd say recent, but I've actually only been climbing a little over 3 years ago. So I had just moved to Brooklyn. I'm originally from Michigan, so I grew up, lakes, bonfires, being outdoors quite a bit.
For sure.
And I moved to Chicago for a little while, and then moved to New York, where we have some lakes and some nature, but it's a little bit harder to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So just after getting here, I watched Valley Uprising on Netflix.
Yes, it's so fantastic.
Immediately, I actually went to REI before I went to the gym and bought shoes. I had never climbed before, and I saw that. I thought, oh, these are my people. This is my thing. Because I grew up skateboarding, and then you get to a point where your knees and your back can't take it.
Absolutely.
And so I got some shoes. I went to the gym, got a year membership on day one, and just kind of fell hard.
Mm-hmm.
So climbing is still pretty new to me because I've done, I'm there 4 to 5 times a week indoors, and then I've done some bouldering around New York, Central Park, when I go visit friends in Colorado.
Oh, yeah. If you come out here, you got to let me know, dude. Out in I live in Boulder, so I'm lucky enough we got Boulder Canyon with about 150 plus sport routes, 15 minutes away, and then we got Flagstaff with like 150 plus bouldering problems like 15 minutes away. It's a dream. Yeah,
I'm gonna take you up on that.
Absolutely, man.
I love making it out there. I think one day we will. We have a few years left here in New York, but heading out west in some fashion is going to happen.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. How was that transition over to Brooklyn, though, coming from kind of an outdoorsy background? Like, I always find it hard myself imagining moving to a city, so.
Yeah, it was, not going to lie, it was a challenge. Partially because when I moved out here, I was working a traveling job. I was a consultant, and so I was gone every week, meaning that I didn't have enough time to at least learn New York. You can learn Chicago in a couple months. It's not that, it's a pretty manageable city. New York is wild, where I was here I was lost for the first year. I would make it a goal to not pull out my phone just on a regular trip into the city.
It's a good way to do it.
And would fail for a year straight. I'm like, oh, well, I'm lost. And there's a lot of stimulation here. So you're just always walking by people, a lot of noise, a lot of things going on. I think I've adjusted to it because once you find the places and the people and the things that you like I found some friends here who, they have a car and we go play Frisbee, or spike ball or something in the park. so I get my hits of nature in bursts here.
Right.
But it's definitely different. I try to go back to Michigan once or twice a year to see the family and just be somewhere quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. Less car
Yeah.
horns, less people.
I think it made me realize how much I appreciated that. So I would say moving somewhere that you're uncomfortable is a great experience. So
Yeah, yeah.
I got here, I didn't realize how much I liked the outdoors until it was a lot harder to get to.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I guess coming out of that, then how did that newfound passion for climbing and transition into Sloth Grip?
Yeah. Uh, so I was guessing this question would come, and I've been thinking
Yeah.
about what's the most concise version of where did Sloth Grip come from? Because it's a bit of a story of kind of what was I doing with my life at that moment, and then throwing a whole bunch of things into a blender and seeing what would happen. So the Cliff Notes version is I had been doing consulting for about 10 years. So I was a market researcher. I kind of go places and usually ask the questions in the interview and like, let people talk about their lives and then sell that to some big brand to sell more things to people. Um, so I've been doing that for a long time. Really interesting job, but not a lot of purpose in it at the end of the day. And like I was saying, just the hours were crazy. So at a certain point after I got to New York, I just quit, which is a little scary, but decided I wanted to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up, and I wasn't going to do that while I had this full-time job.
Right.
So I wandered down to Costa Rica.
Oh, nice.
Partially, yeah, I went down there. Funny enough, I saved money by living in Costa Rica than if I had lived in Brooklyn. So. Just bought a $300 flight down there. Was practicing Spanish, surfing every now and then, and I ended up volunteering at a animal rescue center. So really, really cool experience meeting folks from all over the world, learning a lot about just in the short time I was there, conservation, and meeting a bunch of sloths.
Yeah, for sure.
So I came back from that, and I had these two things in life that I had just found that I really liked. So I loved climbing, and I knew that I wanted more purpose in my work. So I was kind of looking for what would my new job be. And answer number one was, okay, cool, I'll go work for Patagonia. A big company, I respect what they do.
Yeah. I was in that same boat at one point.
Yeah,
100%.
it's like that's the dream, right? Go work for them. And it fit my background, a marketing background.
Yeah.
But my life and my girlfriend, we were in New York. Moving to Colorado didn't feel all that easy. So Slothgrip was the name of my personal Instagram account. It was private, and I used it to just take video of myself climbing to kind of watch over time.
Mm-hmm.
So in that moment, I told it to a friend, and she said, I'm going to buy slothgrip.com if you don't. And whenever I sell it to you, it's going to be much more expensive than the $10 you'll spend right now.
Yeah, it's a good name, dude. It is a good name. I love it.
So I just decided, Slothgrip should be a thing before I knew what it was, and then started piecing together, well, what would that look like? So the things that I knew was that I wanted it to be in the world of climbing, and I wanted it to have a legitimate purpose, whatever that was, at whatever size I could make it.
Right.
So we started from this idea of working together on problems and projects on and off the wall, and just played around with what that might be. So it took a while before we came up with kind of an old school idea with those embroidered patches that sponsor specific conservation projects. And we looked for stuff that just needs a few $100, so that there's some real impact that could be had, even if we're running it out of the apartment.
Right.
And then I wanted to start a skate surf company. So these two, this is nice. So it's not a concise answer. But yeah, growing up, I had a made up skateboarding company called Able Lines.
Sweet.
And we'd screen print T-shirts and hand them out at school. So I just had some fun with thinking, what would the sloth version of climbing be? And it was kind of more of that laid back attitude. It doesn't matter how
Right.
well you climb. Yeah, if you're climbing, you're having fun, you're doing it right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
then, yeah, that's kind of where, when I said it's everything that I like thrown into a blender to see if other people would get it. I really had no idea when I launched the site. I thought it is a sloth-themed climbing brand that funds conservation projects. And this is either the most niche idea in the world, or some other people are going to think it's cool.
Yeah, dude, I think it's awesome. And one of those things you find with people that love doing outdoor sports is that they generally care about the outdoors, right? They care about the animals that are there. They have a huge appreciation for it just from their own experiences outside. And it never, surprises me when I hear people doing things, starting companies that grew up like yourself, like around campfires and just hanging out in nature. My as a child, I was running around barefoot in the creeks and stuff in Florida,
Yeah.
making palm frond forts and all kinds of shit like that. So once you become an adult and you start realizing, like you did, like, well, there's more you can do with your skills and your intelligence and your time than consulting for a big company or what have you. That's when I think you have some great ideas put out into the world and executed on.
Yeah, I think when you spend time in the outdoors, you want to make sure other people can do that in the future. It's one of
Yeah.
those moments of, this was really important to me, and it's something that I love to do, and I'm going to have kids one day. I want them to have that chance. And looking down the road, it's like, let's not screw this up. So
Yeah, absolutely. And what I find pretty cool is that part of living down in Costa Rica. That's pretty awesome.
yeah,
I thought I was big and bold for, packing up my Subaru and driving out to Colorado, but moving to, a whole new country and having that whole experience, like what did that kind of allow you to do, and how did it like change you, as a person?
yeah. That's a good question. So I was down there for around 5 weeks. So in my mind, having always worked jobs that give you 10 days off a year,
Right.
I assumed that 5 weeks was the longest trip anybody had ever taken, and it was so interesting. While I was down there, I kept, I'd stay in hostels and
Yeah.
all of these places where I'd get to meet people who are 4 months into an open-ended trip, and they were traveling around doing a mix of volunteering. It's not it is a vacation because you're somewhere beautiful, but it's really just choosing to live in another place. And then a lot of the folks I was meeting were doing like volunteering as a way to pay for lodging and just. So there was a bit of an eye-opening experience, I think, just coming from the American mindset of how hard we work here, and being down there and meeting people from all over the world that
Just have a
a lot of
totally
them
different
were,
lifestyle, right?
yeah, a lot of them were college students who were taking a year off before college. So at sometimes, like, oh, this is a really cool moment in your life. I'm kind of doing this at 29 just because I'm burnt out.
Yeah.
But so there was that aspect to it, kind of thinking about pace of life, and just even talking to people who live down there. I stayed with a little Costa Rican grandmother who housed students from the Spanish school down the street, and we just would watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in Spanish, and she cooked me way too much food.
That's not a bad thing.
No, I
That food
played
down there, I'm sure,
laser
was
tag.
great.
It was amazing. Yeah. So a lot of it was thinking about pace of life differently, and then also just nature at a whole nother level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think traveling, as far as looking at just Americans and, like you said, the mindset that we have of, and I don't know if you were kind of raised like this, but there's always an expectation to go to school, to get a degree, to get that degree so you can get the high paying job. And then what, I guess, is the question, but, get the family or what have you. But that was similarly, I did some traveling that has opened my eyes up as well to kind of priorities, you know. You get one shot, right, on the earth. So
Yeah.
why spend it doing something that you don't love, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Just out of curiosity, where was one of the trips you went to that just like changed your mind, or one of those eye-opening ones?
Yeah. So when I was a student in college, I studied abroad to New Zealand, right? And similarly, like the culture there, the people, were so friendly, so much more laid back. I felt like they were way more in touch with nature. I know that seems kind of corny to say for some reason.
No, it's fair. Yeah.
But on average, everybody just seemed to have a real deep appreciation for that. They integrated sustainability and environmental stuff into kind of all aspects of their life naturally, and I kind of came away from that experience with a newfound passion for sustainability, and seeing how I can leverage my kind of privilege and being born healthy and intelligent and to a family that loves me. So thankful for all of those things, but how I can turn that into something that's going to benefit the world, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I came back from New Zealand. I founded a student organization immediately after that at UF called Gators for Environmental Community Outreach, right?
Cool.
So we got doing cleanup projects. We brought in speakers. We kept the meetings fun to try to teach students, I guess, about environmental stuff. And yeah, and that was like the first entrepreneurial thing I'd ever really attempted, and it worked out, and people liked it, and I people became friends with each other. That was the coolest part about it, and I kind of attribute all of that change in mindset to like what I learned out in New Zealand. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
here I'll dive into the next kind of question about your long-term vision for Slothgrip. So obviously, I think have a brand that's like a beautiful matchup of both, passions on kind of two sides of the coin, right? And I think you have found something that people are definitely interested in. Your designs are awesome. On top of that, of course, you got to have a great product in addition to the great cause. But where do you kind of see yourself going with this in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah. So goal number one, honestly, is just to survive. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been an interesting. So it's been about 1 year since the site went live. So next month will be the 1 year anniversary of putting it up. And there's over the course of that year, there's been a bit of, I said at first it was, am I crazy? This is a thing I like. Will anybody like it? And so for the first few months, I was looking and saying, it seems some people like this. But I wonder if, 3 months from now, has everybody who thinks sloths, climbing, and conservation, everybody's bought something and we're done here. But as the year's gone on, I've really kind of bought into my own vision, which is an interesting experience. That this is something. I get a lot of feedback, just people writing on Instagram or writing emails in saying some really encouraging stuff about the product and the cause.
Yeah.
And so my hope and my goal is just be around and to make sure that this is something that never loses kind of the original spirit of the idea. So a lot of sloth jokes, but I'm trying to grow slowly and responsibly. Like the way that I think about it is I have a big sign on the wall. This is do stuff on purpose, which seems really straightforward, but there's a lot of moments where I've caught myself thinking, we could totally sell this and we could do this. And I have to pump the brakes a little bit and think, is that true to this whole idea of problems and projects, working on problems and projects on and off the wall. So I want to grow it. I want it to exist in the climbing world and whatever that might be. So there's some product bits of that. It'd be cool to have some more climbing gear, to have grip trainers and things like that. But I'm really excited about the projects that we're funding. And right now we do it through those embroidered patches. But what's been really fun is those patches start interesting conversations that turn into a lot of people just suggesting ideas that make a lot of sense. So, to give an example of that, we have this project called Sloth Speedways, where in Costa Rica they hang rope across anywhere where they have to trim trees for new roads or new houses.
Right.
It keeps wildlife safe because otherwise they're trying to cross the roads or use electrical wires.
Right. Just no
So
bueno.
this is
No
right.
bueno.
No good. A sloth is terrible at crossing the road. So this is a project that we made a patch for, and we were working with the Sloth Institute on. And now, because we've been talking about it and focusing on it for a little bit, we've run across this idea that climbing rope
Yes.
is really, really strong for the amount of weight.
Go like
And
80, 90 slots at least, right?
can hold so many sloths.
So many slots.
They're so safe. So we stumbled across this idea that gyms throw out a bunch of rope when it's dead and it gets frayed and they can't use it anymore. So just from that conversation, I've gone around just to the gyms here in New York and collected 4,000 feet of rope.
Dude, that's so awesome.
Yeah, we're taking it down there next month, piloting the program. As long as it works as well as it does in our heads, we're going to start doing rope drives around the country. And I think what's fun is what started as this little patch that donates, $9 every time somebody buys it, actually turned into something else and something different. And it only happened because we existed. So
right, absolutely. That's such a good idea.
It's that's my way of saying I'm curious to see where it goes.
Yeah.
It's grown out of the apartment. That was a big step for us to go get a little studio space down the street.
Nice.
And I'd love to start selling the patches on gym counters and then, see where it takes us. So
for sure.
Ongoing survival is goal number one. And some stuff like I have a target. I want us to donate $50,000 to these projects within 5 years. I picked that number because I feel like it's large enough that it scares me, and it's not so large that I don't
impossible.
think we can.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's the way to do it. You got to have practical goals, I think matter. And speaking of which, I'm definitely going to hit up the gyms around here. There's between Boulder and Denver, there's at least 10 gyms or something. It's so ridiculous. So I'd definitely be more than happy to be an advocate for you guys around here and see if we can get as much rope as possible.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'd so appreciate that. Let me know if I can, out here on the East Coast, if there's anybody I can go talk to or anything back your way, just give me a shout.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's those combinations that you just don't expect. Like when you're talking about different products you can do, my immediate thought was doing some sort of co-branded crash pad with organic climbing. They're obviously an environmentally focused company, and then your patches obviously would fit perfectly on that. So that was just random things that came to mind. But there's so many, I think, opportunities in this space for you guys to continue to grow and offer new things to the people and the sloths.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's since it's a one-man operation here. I feel like when I go to climbing competitions or events or just stop by gyms and I'm standing at a table, I end up talking everybody's ear off because I've been working in a closet for the last week. So it's really cool to have conversations about all of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I work from home for a full-time job still. And then in addition to that, do all of this stuff, of course, out of home. So I understand where you're at with that. It definitely wears on you a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, what I want to try to do now is a new segment that I've kind of created. So I'll explain it to you real quick. It's called the What If. So the goal here is going to be, I'm going to throw out some hypothetical scenarios, right? And we're going to see if together we can connect the dots back to how it's going to impact the sloths. So it's going to start a little closer, and then the last kind of got 3 scenarios, so we'll see how they go. But the last one is going to be a stretch potentially.
Okay. Cool. You broke up just a little bit there. So it came back in at the Sloths.
Oh,
But
okay.
sorry, I missed the setup. Yeah.
You're good. So, what I'm gonna do is lay out some hypothetical scenarios, right? And we're gonna see if we can connect the dots together of how those scenarios will lead back to impacting the sloths in Costa Rica.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. This is a totally new segment, new idea. So I just think maybe it'll show people how things impact other things, and you got to be considerate, right?
I like it. I'm
Sweet.
up for it.
So the first one I got here is pretty straightforward. What if Costa Rica and Nicaragua out of nowhere got into a war? How would that impact the sloths?
Yeah. Wow. So that's interesting. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind is infrastructure. When
Right.
I guess when there is a war, usually I'm going to guess that new roads are built,
Yeah.
and trees will be cut down for that. And trees are highways for not just sloths, but all sorts of animals that live up there. So I could see something like a war taking immediate, urgent priority in the minds of everybody in those two countries. And as they go and they lay down pathways for supplies and things like that, all of a sudden you'd
Immediate
need,
loss of habitat. Like
yeah.
immediate. Yeah.
And especially, sometimes it's not that wide. You're just cutting down enough trees for a road, but if that's going through an ecological corridor, all of a sudden you have families separated, and that's a big deal for wildlife that live in those areas. So that's one of the first things that just comes to mind.
Yeah. Here's a stretch one. What if because of that war, right, you have supply issues, during world wars with the US, we had to go on rations and so forth. So
Yeah.
this is a stretch. What if people, because sloths are nice and slow, the locals just started eating sloths because there wasn't much food available?
Yeah, I mean,
That's a bit out there.
you are right in the fact that, well, so here's the deal: they're very slow, but they're very tough to find.
Oh, true.
So they're camouflaged from below. One of my jobs at one of the days was to just count the sloths that were waiting in the sloth garden to be re-released into the wild. And it's I knew there were 7 sloths there, and it would take me so long to find all 7. But yeah, poaching already
Right.
is a big deal. And so when the rules change in something like war, I mean that I wouldn't put it past us.
Everything could turn to fair game. Basically, you have an immediate shift in priorities towards away from altruistic things and towards survival based things, I think. So in that, you might lose a lot of the biodiversity and stuff that's around them as it becomes a little less important.
Yeah, I mean, just in the sustainability conversation overall, like that, this is a really extreme example that we're throwing around here, but in general, the whole idea of something else feels more urgent. I feel like that's kind of the cause for a lot of the long-term damage that we cause.
Oh, absolutely. Short-term thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
For sure. So it's only going to get weirder from here. So
Okay.
this isn't that much weirder, but tying back to that, what if then there's not a war anymore, right? So wars in the past or whatever.
Peace.
But yeah. And so what if the US then, like we kind of did to Cuba, for example, put an embargo on Costa Rica? Like, I don't know how much Costa Rica might export to us. I don't know how much that might impact them. But what if economically countries put an embargo on them?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I'm going to make up any response that I have here. This one's over my head a little bit in terms of what might happen.
Yeah, we're just spitting. No facts here per se. We're spitballing. We're spitballing.
All right, so let's say there's an embargo. My head goes right back again to just the resource conversation changes and the culture. I mean, Costa Rica is a very environmentally friendly country. I remember reading a lot about, and I think they were one of the first countries to go a year on sustainable energy. I'm using a fact without knowing if it's true, but
we had
I
a
do.
recent podcast episode where Costa Rica was one of our wardens because they took, I don't know if that was it per se, but they took some big measures. I think it might have been against the plastic bags and stuff, those kinds of bans. But yeah, they're very eco-friendly and conscious.
Yeah, so I think you would hope that in a situation like that, that remains just as much of a focus as it's been.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows what sacrifices have to be made when you have more immediate economic pressures. Like people need to make money, people need to eat.
Right.
I would hope that they already live quite a sustainable lifestyle as is, but realizing I have yet to figure out how this impacts the sloths. I think rising anti-American sentiment from the sloths. Now they're mad at us.
Yeah. Damn it, America. Yeah. My kind of thought, or where my brain was going with that, was maybe, let's see, if we put an embargo or other big nations as well, I'm guessing Costa Rica, because of the climate and stuff, must export, coffee, fruit, etc. And if and with the demand that, you hear my bird going off?
Yeah.
If you hear, Zazzy distracted me so much. So yeah, if one of the biggest demands or people they supply their coffee to, right, just cuts it off, just with the signature on a pin, right, or whatever. Now you have a bunch of jobs displaced, and it could immediately take them into some kind of economic crisis. With that economic crisis, maybe. Let's see. If people can't work, still going off. He bounces. What he does is he'll sit on his perch and bounce up and down, staring at me like jumping.
I think he's got an opinion on your question.
Yeah,
I think
he's like, calling me. I got this.
Yeah, he's like, don't worry.
He hears me struggling here, and he's like, dude, let me take over.
Yeah. No, I see where you're going there. I think, it's back to that whole idea of when the economic rules change for humans, what does that mean for people who can't, not people, for things that don't have a voice? It's like the Roosevelt quote.
There you go.
Was it nature and wildlife can't speak for themselves, so we should and must, or something along those lines. He said it much better than I did. But
the sentiment remains. That's very true. All right, so here, let's try this third one. Here is a kind of based in truth to an extent. So what if Russia becomes the largest global cattle producer, raising over 1 billion cows in the next 10 years? Okay. Which is somewhat based in truth, actually. There was a podcast I listened to explaining that the cowboy culture, oddly enough, is kind of taking off in Russia, and they're starting to raise beef with an actual like government supported goal of reaching 1 billion cattle. It's like, geez, it's a lot of farts.
So
it's a lot of farts.
That is. I was just gonna say, methane is the meat and cattle industry in general is responsible for a ton of methane as is, correctly? Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I feel like the climate change conversation that already is terrifying becomes even more so terrifying. So not knowing exactly how it would play out in a place like Costa Rica, but I can imagine rising global temperatures, no bueno for sloths in terms of anytime you mess up any part of an ecological equation, things start to break down and fall apart. So,
right, the web begins to crumble. Yeah. So sea level rise might, because Costa Rica probably has a lot of valuable oceanfront property as well, I imagine, right? So if that accelerates kind of global warming, then we know the sea level rise is coming with that, And another kind of recent interesting study I saw was saying that the increase in the greenhouse gases may not actually accelerate the growth of plants as apparently was once thought, because obviously the plants are feeding off of that. But the temperatures might throw off weather, soils might get more dry. And then because of that, you have a big desertification problem, right? And Costa Rica is so lush, of course, so I don't know if it would necessarily happen there, but...
Well, even if you think of, so let's say that when the whole world gets quite a bit warmer, I think the number one import, Costa Rica is big on tourism, and tourism is where they get so much of their money. And so let's say places around the world are a little bit warmer for a little bit longer, and maybe Costa Rica is too warm to visit. So the tourism industry can get impacted, messed up, and then all of a sudden we're back to the same conversation around how can a country who already has really great priorities in terms of sustainability, what happens when you take away one of their main products?
Right. Yeah. Does the ecotourism like help fund or feed into the sloth conservation a lot, or is there any connections there?
Yeah, it's interesting. So this is going to be one of those areas where I'm going to tell you what I know, and it may it's also based in what I've heard.
Sure.
There's the positive and the negative version of it. I mean, you'll see places like the Sloth Institute will post about no sloth selfies, and what they're talking about there have been places who, because sloths are popular and sloths are cute, they'll raise sloths. They'll charge tourists to get their photo taken with them. And it's very much treated as a business. So when the sloth gets too old, it's then
not valuable anymore.
Right. It chills in the back of behind the curtain, and it's not for the animal's benefit.
That's interesting. I didn't know that was a thing. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Sloths. I mean, so one of the things is sloths. They're solitary creatures, and they shouldn't really interact with humans.
Makes sense.
So while I was working at the Animal Rescue Center of Costa Rica, one of the rules was you don't touch the sloth, you don't interact with the sloth, because the hope would be that they're being released and they should be scared of humans. It's healthy for them. If they think that when they slowly make their way towards you, you're going to have food and friendship, that's not a good thing. So yeah, I think tourism is helpful in some ways because it brings money in, and with money you can run projects and do research and things like that. But then there's the flip side of that if it's not handled well.
Yeah. Wow. I would have never guessed that was a thing in the industry, but it makes total sense now. Just thinking about the nature of the animal, it's like they're literally just chilling in the trees. Like why would they like a human, coming up and messing with them or trying to take pictures and all that? I never thought about that.
Yeah, it was new. It was new to me too. So I think it's one of those things where I saw photos of people hanging out with sloths, and I thought that seems great. Right. I'd love to do that. Yeah. Or even now, every person in my life sends me, if there is a sloth article on the internet or a photo, I'm going to have it. Now. Yeah, I'm the sloth guy. I'm going to have it texted or emailed to me 10 times over. So a lot of people will say like, "Oh, would you have a sloth as a pet?" And or say something like that because sloths are cool, and we all agree that sloths are cool. And that was actually a learning for me at the beginning of this. It's not good for the animal. It's not. It's that would be a selfish thing that I wouldn't do. And I didn't know that at the beginning. I mean, this is something that you learn as you go, and you try to make better choices. Yeah, although, I mean, sloth as a pet sounds awesome, but that's where you have to think about things, a little differently.
Right. Were there any other things that you kind of learned about sloths or the wildlife out there that you didn't think of before or wouldn't have expected?
That was probably one of the bigger ones. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just fun facts. There were moments where you can visit a place. I'm going to forget the name, but you can visit a place down there where they say, oh, 60% of the birds on the planet are here. And it's like
Wow.
that's just a fascinating moment of the biodiversity available in some Central and South American countries. That's cool. I guess in
Yeah.
terms of learning, I think when I learned that fact about sloths and sloth selfies, um, I I can now bring it up in the conversation. To be a fun guy at parties, but it comes up in conversation. Then you learn things like the elephants in certain countries where it's a big tourist attraction to go and spend time with the elephants and get your photo taken with them and things like that.
Right.
But you then find out that that is something that's not always well regulated. It's sometimes awful for the animals. So I think there's a bit of just eye-opening across the board that if it feels like there's a touristy thing taking place with wildlife, do
You
your
got to be
research.
cautious. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
really good point, especially for anybody listening that's going to go to Costa Rica or Southeast Asia, any of these places where it's, popular to interact with whatever their kind of popular animal is from that place, right?
yeah,
Definitely do your research, because you don't want to be spending your money on something that you don't really know what's going on behind closed doors, and if you did, you wouldn't support it, right? So
yeah,
take a little bit of time there. That's a good tip.
yeah. I mean, you'll get a nice photo and an experience out of it, but um, it might not align with your values. It's one of those things where it's like there are a lot of photos of sloths on the internet, and they're all awesome. You can follow us on Instagram. Like
Yeah, there
there's
you go.
photos out there. So Photoshop yourself into them. I'll help you out.
Right. Yeah, maybe that's a new function on your website to bring in some traffic. Photoshop
Yeah,
yourself in with a sloth.
we have these like little sloth claw, like transparent sloth claws that I'll just put on people's climbing photos and send them back to them on
Nice.
Instagram. So I'm like, hey, I made you a sloth.
That's pretty funny. That's
Yeah.
good. Um, Sweet. So we'll transition now. There's a couple of questions that I kind of like to ask every guest that we have on here, and on the spot, and we always get a fairly wide range of answers in these. But to start off, I guess, if you had to explain, sustainability to a toddler, 4 or 5 year old, in like the simplest terms, or show them, like how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, so I'll caveat with I'm the youngest on almost youngest on both sides of the family, but definitely youngest in my family.
Mm-hmm.
So talking to kids is not a. I'm learning. I'm getting better at it because I have a niece and a nephew.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I'm going to practice here. I think I'd kind of explain it to them like sharing or playing fair. Like it's kind of link it back to some sort of principle that they probably hear in regular life about toys or things like that.
Right.
Like it's an idea of like playing fair with the planet, like with the plants, with the animals, with whatever is important here.
Mm-hmm.
If you make a mess, if you kind of aren't thinking and you waste, I guess they've learned a lot of things at that age about like, oh, don't leave food on your plate, don't let things go to waste, and it's that general principle but applied to uh, the earth
Yeah.
and the plants and the animals on it. So I'd probably go towards something like, yeah, cleaning up your room,
Yeah.
don't leave a mess.
Grounded in that reality for him. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
That is a new one. We haven't heard of. Like when you spill something, right? You don't just leave it there. That's I think an early thing that
yeah.
sometimes you'll teach a kid is like, hey, clean up. Pick your toys up when you're, and that kind of thing. And
Or it's kind of a mean example, but if they have a toy that they've broken, like if they've had a toy and they're like, I was playing with it in a way I knew I shouldn't have, and then it broke, and now we don't have it anymore. Just sustainability is a little bit like that
yeah,
at times, where it's
ah,
like you
now you don't have
you
it.
got
That sucks.
right, you gotta think nicely. It's not easy to teach, I guess, consequences to a toddler, but somebody maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I had this tying back to that club that I started in college. We were getting some inroads to be able to hopefully do lessons in elementary schools around Gainesville. And one of the ideas that we had was to try to teach the idea of, I'm going to blank on the term right now, aren't I?
Yeah.
Of course. What is it? When you're sharing a finite amount of resources, right? If everybody takes as much as they can versus as much as they need, then there's always a loser, right? There's always somebody left out. So, and it would have been so mean, but we were going to bring in, Starburst or something, right? And only have enough so each kid could have one. But we're going to say, hey, we got some Starbursts here, line up, take as many as you want. And at least one person is going to take more than one. And then we're going to look at it and say, hey, these guys were at the end of the line here and they didn't get any. You guys want to share with them or something, right?
Yeah.
Or we would just have more Starburst hidden and give everybody all they want. But
yeah, you got to let it sink in for a moment first,
right,
and then make sure that you bring it
let
out.
It simmer, let a kid cry or two, let the tears roll.
Life lessons brought to you by candy. Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, so I don't remember. I read a quote somewhere. Somebody said that's a different topic, but it was the idea of like the only time you should ever be looking at how much somebody else has is to make sure that they have enough.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a cool thought process of, like, I think even as kids, it's one of those things where there's Starburst in front of me. I like Starbursts. I want 3 of these. I haven't thought about Jimmy and Timmy at the end of the line who are going to be sad in 6 minutes. It's like, it's kind of, going through that process to have people be a little bit more thoughtful.
Yeah, and that keeping up with the Joneses attitude, that's especially prevalent in America. If you're always focused on what your neighbor has or whatever, you see them roll in with the new car and little things like that. It kind of because we have this like consumerist ego or whatever, stuff matters so much to us. It just triggers this little thing in our head. We're like, damn it, my TV isn't 70 inches. Yeah. Well, hopefully we can, reach some more kids and provide any like parents or whatever that are listening. This is the real talk you got to have. Don't worry about the birds and the bees. It's all about the sustainability.
Yeah, it's interesting. So in my other life, the marketing consulting life, we would do a whole bunch of trend work, and we'd run focus groups and talk to like the next generation. And from everything I've seen and heard, I think it's Gen Z, Gen Edge, whatever you want to call them, the next generation coming up, they buy less stuff. They have a pretty cool attitude about a lot of things. And even looking around at my own friends and things like that. It's funny coming from a company that sells products, but I buy way less stuff than I ever used to buy, and I'm cool with that.
Same,
And I would tell other people to buy less stuff. I think that's why when you're talking about Shoe Dog, like that, the reason that book scared me a little bit, but not so much, is that I don't ever want Slothgrip to be the size where we have to make stuff to sell it to survive. And if we don't, we're throwing it away. Like even right now, when we have some extra T-shirts that I didn't love the quality of them.
Yeah.
But after I washed them 10 times, they fade. And so trying to find a use for them. Like we're now giving them out at park cleanups and
that's cool.
Doing things like that. And it's like, buy less stuff. Brought to you by, I think Patagonia was one of the first companies to be really cool about that. And
they had a huge ad campaign that ironically led to a big bump in sales.
Yeah,
that's just how humans work, though. We think buy less stuff, and you're like, oh, I buy into that message. Let me support their company and buy their stuff. It's really ironic, but I bet my big thing is like this jacket's the most recent thing I got at a thrift shop here. I pretty much only buy things like certain pieces of gear that I need, I'm from Florida. I didn't have shit for
Yeah.
winter. I'll tell you what. Like, I
Yeah.
got out here and, this past week we had a -8-degree night. I wasn't ready for that. So, yeah, if you are going to buy stuff, hit those thrift stores up.
Yeah, that's cool. It's there, it works. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
uh,
So the next one I got for you, what are some ways, I guess, in your own life, being somebody that's conscious about the issues that are going on, that you feel that you could improve as far as being like more sustainable and more,
mm,
eco-friendly or what have you?
yeah. Uh, Improve. So one of the ones that uh, I've been doing recently is the less plastic.
Yeah.
Less plastic is something that I'm really excited. It seems like everybody seems to be on board with that as a need. I was talking to my mom, and she just tossed out the Keurig machine and
Nice.
was saying, um, she's like, "Did you know how much plastic is in the ocean?" She saw photos of the collection of it and was pretty angry at how long that's existed, and she had no idea it was there. She's like, "This
Yeah.
why don't more people talk about this, and why isn't more of a thing?" Um, so we've been on team tote bag to the grocery store, and then even like little pillowcases that for
Produce stuff.
produce and
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. So that's one of the areas that we have made some strides. But to your question on what could I be doing more, um, I think the fact that I'm blanking means the answer to that is research. I remember growing up,
There you go. That's really good
there's
insight.
like, yeah, there was tips. It was like, hey, you had that commercial that if you ran the water, it kind of showed you the pond was lowering, and there was a cartoon fish who was really bummed
Mhm.
out. So I remember turning off water, turning off lights. Like we grew up talking about that.
That's awesome.
But I haven't updated my list in a long time. I ride my bike or walk, don't to work because it's
So
close.
one good part about a city for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's time to look stuff up and see what else I can be doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's constantly reevaluating. Like admittedly, my worst one is probably water use. I have this like addiction to like hot showers, and I've been in and out of the habit of shutting the water off while I lather, and that was something I hadn't heard about until fairly recently because of a podcast of a guy in California, and they had those drought issues, right?
Yeah,
And I was like, oh shit, I never even considered it. I never even considered it, and but it's hard to sometimes work those new things to be really routine, like especially when it's cold, and I'm in
yeah,
the lower floor and I'm like, oh, just a nice hot shower hits, I don't know, there's something about it, but
yeah. No, it's not. It's like the prisoner's dilemma thing, or this moment of everybody else is going to run the shower and this is awesome. So why would I turn mine off?
right.
But that's good. I mean, I don't turn my shower off when I lather, but see, now I've learned something.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give that a shot. Give that a shot.
Yeah, it's a good one. But yeah, so hopefully and that's kind of honestly why we're here, is to try to, as a media company, I guess, be entertaining and introduce people to more ways that they can improve their own lives, and more opportunities that they can support, of course, good companies like your own, to help give back to the world.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I love your guys' mission and that idea of just talking about things like this. And I think what's important is, I'm not going to lie, coming into this, I was a little bit um, worried that I was going to say something and look dumb and not be sustainable enough. And then I had a moment of, well, I'm trying. And I think that's part of it. It's just like, you don't have to know every possible thing to do. And
Right.
hopefully you're not judged for not having known that or having done that so far, but
Yeah.
try, learn.
That's what it's about. I hate,
Yeah.
there's a big issue, I think, right now in the world of sustainability, that's setting, like people that may not know a whole lot, see an impossible standard, like a zero waste video that goes viral, right? And they just
Yeah.
like, holy shit, I can't do that. That's crazy. And then
Yeah.
so they don't take into account the steps those people took to get there and see what they could actually easily incorporate into their own life. So we're like all about, practical sustainability. Like, I understand that we're humans. I understand not everybody can afford to do X, Y, and Z, and everybody's going to have, their different areas that they struggle in and trying to reduce their footprint. But Damon, as long as you're trying, like, we'll get better as a country. You'll get better as a person, and the growing trend, I think, and being conscious about everything is gonna continue to spread and ultimately improve things and make it for the better. So
yeah, completely agree. That idea of, like, this isn't an exclusive lifestyle. There's no shaming.
Yeah, it's not a club, man. There's no club here.
we're all
it's
on
a human
team,
club.
Yeah, same team. Planet should stick around.
Yeah.
We should just be as responsible as possible. I think, I wish corporations had these conversations. Not to go down that path, but it's exciting when you talk to other people. Yeah. And you hear people getting on board with this, and some big companies are on board with it. But
right, it's getting more popular, and big corporations are taking notice, and I think making real efforts to realizing, I guess, the size of their impact. I think a small change in a massive corporation can be a kind of big change in the broader picture, right? So I'm definitely encouraged with where things are going. I'm glad to see more companies like your own and more people like yourself trying and doing something that matches their passions with kind of altruistic motives. And the world's going to be better because of it. So I think with that, I'll what are some things going on that you guys have that we can put out there to the world, and ways that they can support Slothgrip and the sloths?
Yeah. So always, slothgrip.com is the website that just talks a little bit about whatever projects that we currently have going on. So the two ones that we launched with were Sloth Speedways, that one that I spoke about a little bit earlier. We're working with the Sloth Institute in Manuel Antonio National Park, hanging ropes in trees, non-invasive pathways. It's a very cool project, and depending on when this comes out, hopefully we'll be talking about rope drives and how to get, if you have a climbing rope that's done, how we're interested in it. So we're going to figure out the shipping and the logistics to make that all work.
Yeah.
But hopefully that project is moving forward like we think it is. So you can always check out the website to see that project. There's also some cool stuff going on with the Toucan Rescue Ranch. So they're just outside of San Jose. We have patches and badges that support them and some of the work that they do. And then we just launched a new badge. So when I say badge, it's like an embroidered patch and button where we give all of the profits to specific projects. And this new one that we're rolling out has smaller suggested projects from the community. And so on that one, we're really excited about it because it's something that we can raise $200 for a single piece of equipment. The first one is we're trying to buy a fire prevention kit for some conservation education work that one of the biologists I met when I was in Costa Rica, kind of on my trip, she's now doing work in Indonesia with orangutans.
Oh, nice.
And we like sloths and we like orangutans too. Pretty much seems like anybody that hangs out in the trees. But so you can always check out what projects are going on and then suggest projects. We're pretty, shoot me a note, Kevin at slothgrip.com, only employee here. And we like to support anything you're doing in the community. So if we can shoot over T-shirts or just get a group together, if you're doing park cleanups, things like that, it's a pretty broad definition in terms of what we'll get involved with. So yeah, Instagram and the website are the only places to check us out. But I would suggest to send me a note if you're interested in doing something, because we're pretty much crowdsourcing ideas here.
Nice. And last, or I guess real quick, what were the two main institutes that you guys were donating to again?
Yep. So the Sloth Institute, you can go straight to their website, and they have some cool stuff that if you want to skip us and go straight to them, we're all for it. They do awesome work. And if you go to their Facebook or their Instagram, they're always posting pretty actively about what they're up to.
Nice.
And the Toucan Rescue Ranch as well. So same deal. They're on the social media, and are talking. Toucan Rescue Ranch takes in wildlife that's captured by reclaimed from poachers, from illegal pet trade, or found injured, and they'll work with rehabilitation and release of the animals when possible. And if not possible to release, they can live out their life there as a sanctuary.
Nice. So, that's both great causes. So be sure, guys, to support Kevin and Slothgrip, and in addition to that, check out the nonprofits there. Nothing's stopping you from donating directly. And I guess that being said, that's pretty much it. So thanks for listening, guys. Again, check out slothgrip.com, and remember, protect your wild. Thanks again, guys, for listening, and shouts out to Valleys, who created our theme song. Very appreciative for that. Lastly, don't forget again to subscribe, leave us a review, let us know how we're doing, and share with your friends. Find us on Instagram and all that stuff at ALDA Lifestyle. See what else we got going on at aldalifestyle.com.